I'm here to talk to you about employment in Canada, and actually this is the first time I've seen Matt present on employment in the UK. And we actually have some data on quality of employment, and so now we're going to be talking over supper about how we can share some of that data. So I'm not giving you an outline because I only have 5 slides, so I think you could probably follow along, so I'll just jump right in. This is our conceptual framework. Carl was talking earlier about how important it is to have a conceptual framework. And it's not just important to research, it's important, we use this conceptual framework in our communications, our well-being surveillance framework to look at how the population is doing over time. We use it for policy, and as Sunila showed earlier, we use it in screening, so self-assessment screening tool that was developed based on these domains of well-being. But it was also being used to redesign our screening that we do at transition and among all of our clients as well. So it's proved to be quite useful. So the area, of course, I'm going to focus on is purpose/employment, and what's in the center here is well-being overall. And the arrows are meant to show you that there's interconnections between these domains. The one that for employment that's important or almost obvious is that it relates to finances. So employment creates finance, but it also creates identity, a sense of self-worth, which crosses over into kind of the culture area at the bottom. It also has to do with health, and it's a kind of bidirectionally with health as well. So those who are not healthy are less likely to be employed, but the reverse is very true. Those people who are employed are much more likely to be healthy. It improves, not just be healthy. Employment improves health. And there's more recent research around the quality of employment and the connection to health and well-being as well. Okay. So there are many measures of employment, but in this presentation I'll just be covering really 3. One is labor market participation. Matt covered some of those sorts of things. Work disability and satisfaction with work. So this is a little bit on the demographics of the population of the Life After Service studies. Sunila mentioned there's been 3 cycles of these studies. It includes a survey as well as an income tax record linkage set, so we can look at income pre and post release from the military. So this covers, the one we did in 2013, covers the population of regular force veterans as well as primary reserves, mostly since release from 1998 to 2012. So they're mostly a working age population, around 90% of them. Many, or about half, served for more than 20 years, which is kind of a point where it's considered about a full career in the military. And very few had less than high school education. The Canadian military have quite high levels of education overall. So this one is meant to show you a couple of things. One is that the main activity at release, so this is asking them what was your main activity after release, and then what was your main activity in the year before you released. So there was an average of about 7 years between release and the time that we actually surveyed them. So the working rate, as you can see, is fairly high in the year after release, but it increases quite a bit to that average 7 years out. And most of that, where that comes from, or the increase in the employment rate, comes from those who were in education or training in the year after release, those who are looking for work, and some who reported they were retired not looking for work. Actually, many, about 40%, ended up going back to work. So I'm not sure exactly what was going on there, but many are returning to work. What is not changing there is the percentage that report that they were on disability or disabled. Now that percentage is very hard to move, and it's also a group that are not happy with that as a main activity. They're not happy with their finances, they're not happy with that as a main activity, and they're not happy with life. So it's one that we've been focusing more on. So this one is showing at the 7 years on average after release what the Canadian population looks like in comparison to the veteran population. And this controls is regular force veterans, doesn't include reserves. But this controls for age and sex differences between the population. So as you can see, the unemployment rate is the same. So they've gone through a little bit of a bumpy road for the most part, and then come out around parity. And this was a little bit surprising to us, and it's been repeated 3 times now. We see the unemployment rate looking the same as the Canadian population, especially because the rate of disability among the veteran population is double that of Canadians. So we expected to see something higher here, but when you delve into it a little bit further, what you see is that this unemployment here is measured as those people who are looking for work. People who are experiencing disability, they get out of the labor market. They give up looking for work. There are too many barriers. Some of them are even there's a financial barrier to work. There's kind of a benefits trap that Jacko talked about earlier. So this is the one that we're having kind of the hardest time with. So in that, the rate of not being in the labor market, meaning not being employed, not looking for work, is higher among the veteran population than Canadians. And the other thing that's triple that of Canadians is those who are experiencing work disability at work. So this means that they're having trouble participating in their role at work. So fairly high employment rates, but among those working are having a much harder time. So this is this area of kind of quality of work, and I'll be publishing a paper on this actually pretty soon, coming out in the CIMVR journal. Heidi, who's from CIMVR, it's coming out in their journal soon. So what we looked at here is among those working, how satisfied were they with work? And as Carl mentioned earlier, we need to be targeted when we look at interventions. And so what group would you probably target your satisfaction with work intervention on? If you were to target a group, it would probably be those in lower rank. So they have a much lower rate of satisfaction with their work than senior officers, and senior officers, it's almost 90%, so it's quite high. And then we've looked at, in the paper that'll be coming out, we've looked at some of the factors that are associated with these satisfaction rates, so it'll help us better target interventions towards improving satisfaction. So some of the lessons learned, the first one is know your population, and I mean your population, this country's population. Before we had the life after service studies, which are, it's the entire population of veterans released since 1998, includes clients and non-clients of Veterans Affairs Canada, and as Sunil pointed out, less than 20% overall of the veteran population are clients of VAC or receiving benefits from VAC, so we don't have ongoing contact with a lot of them. So you need to know what your population looks like. And one of the things that we also found out with although the medically released veterans were much more likely to report a difficult adjustment to civilian life than non-medically released veterans, when you look at the sheer size, the majority of those reporting difficulty were non-medically released. So we need to also be focusing on that population as well. In Canada, we've probably focused a lot more on the medically released population and I think the same is true in the UK, and we're starting to understand more. And I think it's because of these conceptual frameworks where we're looking at more than just health, we're looking at the interactions between health and other domains of well-being. I'm having a hard time reading the second one. Oh, yes, okay. So as you saw, that labor market changes. The labor market is very dynamic. So it's not just about getting a job, it's about keeping that job as well. And so veterans do go through, a little bit of a bumpy path. So we're starting to look at our screening, how we can follow up with veterans later, not just at the transition time period. So we have very extensive screening and transition interviews at release, but that might not be the best timing for a lot of people. I'd have to, what was the next one? Oh, yes, okay. So our outcomes vary depending on the subgroup of the population, and you saw that in the satisfaction with work. Unemployment is very similar. Younger veterans are much like younger Canadians, we're more likely to be unemployed as well. So we've got to take that into account. You want to read the next one to me, too? Oh, yes, yeah. So the other thing that we've conducted a few studies around the area of work disability and impairment, and the two don't equal. So what I mean by that is that it's very rare that someone cannot work with the proper support. So with evidence-based, comprehensive rehabilitation, medical, psychosocial rehabilitation, and even supported employment, which is employment that's supported after the first job. You continue to support the veteran, and any accommodations they may need is evidence-based as well. Oh, yeah. In 1945, Canada had what was called the Veterans Charter, and it was based on the concept of opportunity with security. So this is a concept that we're having a very hard time maintaining. There's a real kind of tension or balance between program affordability and income adequacy, and providing the right amount of benefits to veterans, but still encouraging labor market engagement. And that's so in 2006, we put in what was called the new Veterans Charter. So it was modernizing our disability management system. Two other countries, the UK and Australia, made some similar changes, but it's proven to be quite difficult, because reintegration to the labor market is a very difficult task. And so it is getting, there's four main systems that that have to be integrated in order to do a good job of this, and that's the labor market system, the healthcare, the personal system, so barriers, including perhaps financial barriers to reintegration, and the compensation system, and Veterans Affairs is kind of part of the problem and also the solution around compensation. So that's all I have. If anybody would like to contact me, we have a lot of information on our website too, if anybody would like to have a look at some of those things too, and you can contact me at Veterans Affairs as well. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, Mary Beth.